Hello, everybody. Welcome to this research conversation seminar. So today we have Lia AMELIA and Muhammad Shukri from the SMERU Institute in Indonesia. And they'll present the latest research conducted in the framework of the AFD EU Research Facility on Inequalities in Indonesia. So this work started a couple of years ago, and we have the first academic results that Lia will present us today. So Lia will have 30 minutes to present this first paper, and this will be followed by a discussion by Julian CLIFTON from University Lincoln in UK. So Julian, you'll have 10-15 minutes for this discussion, and this will be followed by a Q&A. And it's all going to be moderated by me. If you have some questions, feel free to ask them, to post them on a chat, and I'll pick them up by theme or by order of appearance, and then I'll pass them on to our speakers. And this seminar will be in English only, and I hope that was clear in the invitation. And yeah, Lia, the floor is yours. Let's dive into it.
All right, thank you, Oskar. All right. All right, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone, Indonesia time, and good morning, Paris time. My name is Lia AMELIA. I'm from the SMERU Research Institute. We are very honored today to present you the result of our study with title Balancing Conservation and Community Welfare, Enhancing the Management of Marine Protected Areas in Indonesia. We are very honored to have everyone here registered and participant in the webinar. And through this, we want to express our gratitude to AFD for the support and funding on this project. All right, let's dive right in. Before we go further to our slide, let's begin by understanding the definition of MPAs. According to the regulation from Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries of Indonesia, marine protected areas are defined as a protected water areas that are managed through zoning system to achieve sustainable management of fish resources and the environment, serving as protected and unified ecosystem. For the context of Indonesia, by 2021, the MPAs area already covered 28 million hectares of Indonesian water areas territory. So that's about 8.7% of the whole Indonesian water territory. MPAs comes with benefits, but also there is risk. Let's first discuss about the benefits of MPAs. MPAs can contribute to the conservation of the biodiversity. MPAs safeguard the habitats, preserving diverse marine ecosystem, and protecting vulnerable species. By doing so, MPAs enhance ecosystem resilience and contribute to the long-term health of marine environments. From MPAs, that there is something that we call as a spilling over fish effects from the implementation of MPA. This situation, this spillover fish happen when protected fish population grow so healthy in the protected areas that they expand their habitat beyond the MPAs. But it is also essential to acknowledge that the implementation of MPAs it has some implication for the local communities. Oftenly, MPAs will restrict the activities in the protected areas, such as fishing or tourism. So tourism could include diving, snorkeling. Therefore, it has potential to displace the fishing activities, something that the local community has been done. And in addition to that, MPA may have limited enforcement capacity, because the success of MPAs rely on the compliances that is influenced by the strength of the enforcement. If we fail to manage the risks, there could potentially be unbalance between the conservation agenda and also the community need, enhancing local community welfare in the areas near MPAs. For the context of Indonesia, Indonesia is one of the countries with the longest coastline in the world. It's archipelago. It with abundant marine wealth. The marine sector in Indonesia play a crucial role to support the livelihood of the population, particularly those residing in coastal areas. Because of that, the policy development and the management of regarding coastal and marine sectors, including marine protected areas, should be able to contribute to the welfare of the population residing in coastal areas such as fishermen. Several regulatory frameworks already emphasize the importance of marine sectors, including MPAs, not only for conservation, but also for people's welfare. Article number 33 of Indonesia Constitution regarding social welfare already emphasized that it entrusts the state with controlling and utilization of natural resources for public prosperity. Several law and regulations, such as law number 27, year 2007, regarding coastal and small island management in Indonesia, already emphasized sustainable management for public prosperity. Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries in Indonesia, through the regulation number 2, year 2009, regarding the procedure for designating marine protected areas, also highlight that the goal of marine protected areas is not only for conservation, but also to preserve local wisdom and enhance people welfare. The regulation that I mentioned you previously seems relevant, considering coastal communities in Indonesia still face relatively low living standard, with many coastal area, many people living in coastal area live under poverty. Based on in a meeting to tackle extreme poverty, the Vice President of Indonesia, Mr. Ma'ruf Amin, stated that out of 212 districts in Indonesia that are targeted for extreme poverty eradication program, about 147 of them, or 69% of them, are located in coastal areas. What does this show us? It shows us that despite the fact despite the wealth of marine resources in Indonesia, coastal area in Indonesia still grapple with high poverty rates. Now, we have a question whether the regulation that I previously mentioned that already take into account not only conservation but also the welfare, the community welfare enhancement, is the regulation have the regulation been effectively implemented in practice? Unfortunately, some empirical evidence suggests that is not the case. According to study from Rosadi et al. That investigated the impact of marine protected areas and interviewing influential stakeholders who participate more in MPA management, and also interviewing non-influential stakeholders who didn't participate or have a little participation in MPA management, found different opinions about the current or the existing MPA management in their area. While the influence stakeholders saying that current MPA management is the best way to sustain prosperity, but non-influential stakeholders said the otherwise, stating that the current MPA management is still not effective in achieving MPA socio-economic goals. Study from Kusumawati and Huang also suggested that also found that MPA established through bottom-up and managed by locals are more successful than top-down process. And study from King, Aduri, and Clifton found that equitable resilience of communities near MPAs to raise back from the pandemic can be overlooked when the local community voices are not taken into account, suggesting that planning MPA resilience must align with the local with the local to make sure to better serve the local needs. So we already see the regulation, and we see the empirical what empirical evidence suggests. So it looks like there is a disconnection between the regulation and also what's happened on the ground. So it is important to have it is needed and important to have an enhanced MPA management approach to ensure that MPA can function effectively as a powerful instrument for both conservation and improve the long-standing socio-economic challenge faced by the communities residing near the MPA's area. Through this study, we wanted to examine the status and the challenge of enhancing the welfare of coastal communities living near MPAs, and we wanted to evaluate the current MPAs management practices. To achieve this purpose, we did a mixed method by combining qualitative and quantitative. For the qualitative, we did a data collection in three villages located in MPA core zone in three areas: Safusi, Nusa Penida, and North Minahasa. And the data was collected through FGD, in-depth interviews, observation, and also observation. In addition to that, we also did a desk study to review the regulation regarding MPAs in Indonesia. Meanwhile, the quantitative data analysis was conducted by using data from census or survey data to provide us with socioeconomic indicator in the area near MPAs versus area far from MPAs. The indicators may include poverty, access to basic needs, and amenities. And this is the location of qualitative data collection. As you can see here, this is the maps. This is Indonesian maps where gray represent the districts and blue represent the MPA zone. This is the area, the location of data qualitative took place here in Nusa Penida in Bali, and also in Safusi in East Nusa Tenggara. So this is like in the middle of the sea. And also the other one is located in North Minahasa. But as you can see, North Minahasa, there is no blue color at the time because by the time of our interview, the status of the MPA in North Minahasa was still reserved MPA, so it is not officially yet as the MPA from Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries. Ensuring decent welfare and living conditions for communities near MPAs is important for several reasons. Number one, the community located near MPAs, they usually heavily rely on the natural resources provided by marine environment for their livelihood, for example, fisheries or tourism. And number two, because the communities located near MPAs, they play a crucial role in conserving and managing the protected areas. They safeguard the environment, they have local knowledge that can be used, that can contribute in effective conservation practices in the area. However, despite the significance to make sure that the welfare of the communities near MPAs, it is still concerning to observe that the areas near MPA still face a socio-economic challenge. I'm going to show you the socio-economic indicators here. I'm going to use poverty rate and also Gini index. And poverty rates represent the proportion of population living below the poverty line in a village level, and Gini index assess the expenditure inequality in the area. So the differences between the poor, the differences between the expenditure of the rich and the poor. And first thing first, let's see the chart in the left hand side. So ignore the right hand side. Let's focus on the left hand side. So the left hand side chart shows you the mean poverty rate in MPA village and non-MPA village. MPA village is represented by MPA village, MPA area. It will be represented by blue, the color blue, while non-MPA area will be presented with brown. So that's going to apply for the rest of our slides. As you can see here, so we in the first chart we are looking at the mean of poverty rate. As you can see that from 2010 until 2015, the mean of poverty rate decreased in both kind of village, in both MPA village and non-MPA village. But when we compare the differences, we take the differences, we take the poverty rate differences between 2015 to 2010 for the MPA village, and we compare that same differences with non-MPA village. And what we got, we got that although both MPA and non-MPA village experience a decrease in the poverty rate from 21 to 2015, MPA village shows a comparatively smaller decrease in poverty rate from 21 to 2015 compared to non-MPA village. And then let's move on to the next chart. And chart in your right-hand side shows the mean Gini index of village, of MPA village and non-MPA village. And as you can see, that the Gini index, the average Gini index for MPA village and non-MPA village increased from 2010 to 2015. And when we did a comparison using a statistical test, we found that MPA village actually exhibit higher increase of a Gini index or inequality than non-MPA village. What does this chart show us? It shows that area near MPAs encounter socioeconomic challenge indicated by a smaller reduction in poverty and higher increase in Gini index or inequality. All right. And then we got a chance to take a closer look regarding the access of people who live near MPAs, and do they have a better access to infrastructure, to basic amenities? Unfortunately, that is not the case. Coastal communities residing near MPAs also face challenge in assessing in basic infrastructure such as a strong cellular phone signal. They have a lower access of adequate sanitation in their household, even lower than the national. National is presented by the dashed black line. And then when we see here the chart in the middle, community near MPAs, they have a fewer number of midwives in their village compared to national, and also compared to a village, non-MPA village. And they also have lack of access to financial resources, as indicated by a smaller number of community credit banks, for example, that is shown in the right chart. So that's the condition of their access to basic to infrastructures and basic amenities. And now we move on to take a look at the job sectors. When it comes to job sectors, the data from PODES is Village Potential Census, shows that agriculture, fisheries, and plantation remain the predominant source of livelihood in both MPA and non-MPA village. But fish captures activity is more prevalent in MPA village, as you can see here, indicated by the green line here. So we can see from the green line, it looks like the fish capture activity, even in MPA village, there does not seem to be any noticeable reduction. It's quite contrary with the previous study indicated that the fish capture activity in MPA areas decrease because of, for example, the restriction imposed imposed by the MPAs to restrict people to do activities in protected areas. That is not the case here in MPA village in Indonesia. Why there is no reduction? Why there doesn't seem to be a reduction in fish capture activities? It could be attributed to several things. For example, the location of MPAs, is distant from where the fishing ground, where the community usually catch fish. For example, this is the case that we found in Saburai Jua, where the MPA is located like in the middle of nowhere, far from where the community is fishing ground. And the other reason that can attribute to this, it may suggest that there could be lack of enforcement of fishing restriction within the MPA's area. Therefore, we do not see any reductions in the fish capture activities. In MPS area, when creating MPAs, the MPS management must consider alternative livelihood for the community, for the local community, because this can help to alleviate pressure on marine resources. As I mentioned to you previously, MPA sometimes they impose restrictions for people to do activities in protected areas such as fishing or tourism. Therefore, MPA authority is supposed to be able to provide alternative livelihood for them. But the qualitative findings indicate that there is still lack of formal alternative livelihood strategies being promoted by the MPA authorities. As suggested by one of informant from BKKPN of Kupang City, who stated that, however, due to the limited utilization, the economic condition doesn't change much. So I think it would be better to diversify the range of economic activities there. Before we look further, why the socioeconomic condition of people residing near MPAs is not better from time to time, and they still face this long-standing socioeconomic challenge, and it looks like there is no improvement. Let's take a look how MPA is managed in Indonesia. In Indonesia, MPAs are managed by central and provincial government. The NGO actors and other parties can also participate in the management. And for the central government, MPA is managed through Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries through BKKPN or LKKPN. For provincial government, the MPA is managed through UPTD or local marine agencies, and NGO actors can also participate in the management, in managing the conservation zone, doing study, monitoring, and provide capacity building. And other parties like academic, local community, foreign tourists can also participate in the management. One of the issues that may contribute to inadequate implementation in MPA, so that's why we see there are still long-standing socioeconomic challenge among communities near MPAs. One of the issue that can contribute to that situation is the MPA centralized governance. In Indonesia, there is a law number 23, year 2014, that brings significant change to MPA management by transferring the authority from the district to provincial government. Such regulation does not encourage commitment to manage MPA adequately, with UPTD having limited funds, control, and capacity. This limitation may hinder the implementation of socioeconomic programs as one of the goals from MPA. It is indicated by qualitative findings when we get a chance to interview the fishermen in Sabu. The fisherman stated that he and his peers would take everything, would take care of everything by themselves rather than consulting with UPTD, considering their lack of response when fishermen reporting illegal fishing activities. So they would say like it's better for us to step up by ourselves rather than consulting the matters to UPTD. The qualitative findings shows that management of MPAs still lack of key function. For example, key function in managing the MPAs, such as information dissemination regarding MPAs, biodiversity restoration, supervision, and let alone community welfare enhancement. As indicated by one of our informant in North Sulawesi, who said that it looks like the government is doing internship at the NGO. NGOs are the one who build the government awareness toward MPA. If NGO do not have initiative, the government will not make any progress. And shortage of skilled personnel in the agency tasked with managing MPA may further worsen of the management problem. Qualitative findings from when we interviewing UPTD and Nusa Penida, there's like insufficient competence and expertise among field staff, and also there is a lack of onboard and technical training for staff in MPA management. Our findings also reveal that the involvement of local community in MPA management, that there are some degree of community involvement, but that involvement does not consistently encompass all segments of the community. For the case of Saburajua and Nusa Penida, only influential people know about MPA. For example, village heads. This condition leaving the marginalized groups such as women, housewives, and older people behind. And if you see the graph, if you see this graph from the EFLA survey, it also shows that female participation in community meetings is way lower than male in MPAs area. But actually, it's not only in MPAs area, but also in non-MPAs area. And this kind of culture is something that we refer as a benevolent elite, where only few people participate in decision making and hold the necessary information to govern MPA effectively. And this seclusion may lead to MPA management decisions that disregard local needs, resulting in resentment, non-compliances, and worsening socioeconomic condition. When we did data collection in Nusa Penida, we found out that actually there are some degree of community participation in MPA initial consultation, but there is a limited awareness. So they were not informed well what is the implication of the MPA, so they're just okay with the decision. But by the time they know that there will be a restriction and they will be restricted to use this particular area, they were not happy about that, and they feel like making that they make the decision, they agree on something that they don't know what the implications are. When we did reviewing the regulation from Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fishery regarding the regulation of MPAs, we found there is a reduction. In 2009, in regulation year 2009, Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fishery clearly stated that one of the goals of MPA is to improve local community welfare. In 2020, this goal is gone. It's no longer there. It suggests there is a shift in priorities that unfortunately may lead to reduced attention to well-being of local communities. So this reduction in addressing the long-standing socioeconomic challenge is the reduction is evident in the lack of progress in addressing the long-standing socioeconomic challenge faced by the people residing near MPAs. One fundamental issue that we want to highlight besides MPA governance when addressing welfare problems in coastal communities near MPA is the tendency of the government, the bureaucrats, to prioritize quantity over quality. Currently, in Indonesia, there are, at least by 2021, there are more than 20 million hectares of MPA areas in Indonesia. It's there, the area is large, but it is not always functioning to conserve marine biodiversity, let alone empower the people who live near MPA. We found that one study found that only a small number of MPA that already perform well in implementing the management plan. And I wanted to show you this chart that shows the progress or the progress or the development of additional MPA areas in Indonesia from year to year. As you can see that after 2013, particularly, there is a steep increase in the number in the additional number area in the additional areas MPA areas number. The thing, why this could be the case? It can be attributed to several things. Number one, UN convention that set target for country members to have at least 10% of the country coastal areas to be conserved by 2020, and law number 23, year 2014 that I mentioned previously, that lead toward more centralized government, giving more freedom for the national government to create MPAs. And the culture of prioritizing quantity over quality is also reflected from EFICA. So that's the last bullet point here. EFICA is MPA evaluation system from the Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries of Indonesia. It basically wanted to evaluate the aspect of MPAs in Indonesia, but unfortunately, EFICA focused more on quantity over the quality of aspect being evaluated. So the current EFICA is more about compiling administrative inputs, the process, outputs, outcomes, and less about quality. Before we finish our presentation today, I would like to take a moment to summarize some key findings that we already discussed today. The study findings provide a valuable insight to improve MPA management, aligning conservation and community welfare objectives. Number one, cross-sector collaboration. Cross-sector collaboration is a key to address socioeconomic challenge faced by the communities located near MPAs. The collaboration can be between ministries, local government, NGOs, with private sectors to achieve MPAs conservation and socioeconomic goals. Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fishery alone, if they may be insufficient to answer the socioeconomic goals. And then enhancing capacity. Enhancing capacity can be done through staff trainings and the use of standardized tools for balanced and effective MPA management. And incorporating community welfare objective. So MPA regulations should incorporate the objective of improving local community welfare. So that's something that we see missing from Ministry of Marine Affairs regulation from 2009 until 2020. So this objective is missing. It looks like it's no longer the priority. While supporting community welfare in MPA areas is crucial because it recognizes the interdependence between the community well-being and also the environmental sustainability. If we promote community welfare, such as provide them with alternative livelihood and make them having more access to basic services, basic infrastructure. It creates incentives for local communities and reduce their dependence to unsustainable practices, and in turn contributes to the long-term success of conservation initiative. And sustainable community participation is important. Encouraging community participation in MPA management is vital to ensure that their voices are being heard, and then to ensure that their participation is sustainable, not just coming to one meeting and then that's it, and but also does not burden the community unnecessarily. And for your information, we have developed a comprehensive toolbox for policymakers and PA managers, and also field staff who involve in MPA governance. And we already created a toolbox according to this point that we show you in this slide. So this toolbox is intended to integrate initiative for enhancing the welfare of community residing near MPA and reduce the inequality, beginning from preparation, establishment of MPA, planning, budgeting, as well as monitoring and evaluation. And currently, that toolbox is under review and in finalization stage. All right, I have reached the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention. I'm now open to any question and feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. We have an interesting and pressing question from François Roubaud in the chat. Julian, maybe you can do your discussion. I think you addressed some of those points, and we can wrap up an answer maybe after your discussion, Julian. The stage is yours. We can't hear you. You're muted.
Pardon. Salam Bapegi. Bonjour tout le monde. Je suis Julian CLIFTON. I work at the University of Lincoln. Saya akan berbicara dalam bahasa Inggris, maaf. I will keep this to 10 minutes, and I'm just setting my timer. I would just like to expand on some of the excellent presentation there, and to maybe present a few broader contextual points for discussion, which may help. I won't go into this in detail, just a very quick recap of the international targets for context. We all know remember back in 2011, in terms of expanding marine protected areas, the Aichi target set 10% of coastal marine areas to be under effective protection, which was expanded late last December to the 30 by 30 target, 30% of coastal marine areas to be under effective protection by the year 2030. And if we have a quick look at a global map, we see the extent of marine protected areas worldwide. A lot of these are admittedly in overseas territories held by European countries, particularly France, the UK, Spain. And also very many of these are being established in large remote areas, particularly also in areas beyond national jurisdiction. So just to bring us up to date in terms of marine protected areas worldwide, the Protected Planet website tells us we've reached 8%, just over 8%, with over 18,000 marine protected areas and almost 30 million square kilometers. And you can see obviously the rate of marine protected area expansion has been significant in the past 20 years or so, in line with the international targets that are being set to countries under the CBD. Indonesia has actually been a leader in this context. Before the Aichi targets were published, Indonesia set itself a target of 200,000 square kilometers to be under MPA coverage by year 2020, which was reached prior to the target, and is currently, we're looking at about 280,000 square kilometers of marine protected area coverage. And the Indonesian government has expanded those targets now. So by the year 2030, the MPA coverage is set to reach 10% of the EEZ, and by the year 2045 to reach 30%. So these issues that we've been talking about earlier with regard to basically quantity and quality of MPA management are highly significant. And the research that we've been hearing this morning has been reflected in other contexts. And I'd just like to introduce a quick paper before looking at some of the implications of the comments and issues that have been raised. Apologies, this is one of those complicated, unnecessarily complicated diagrams, but I will pick up just a few key points from this diagram, which very much complements the work that we've been hearing about. So this is a similar piece of work where a larger number of MPAs were analysed, so over 60 MPAs, using a standard management effectiveness tool to indicate the quality of inputs and outputs and so on, and how those affected MPA performance. And we see on the vertical axis, those are all the parameters, those are all the factors. The numbers along the bottom axis are just the individual MPAs. And the color coding mean blue indicates poor performance, red indicates good performance, which is not the usual way around. So, for example, we can see in the middle of the diagram, virtually all the 61 MPAs studied had a zoning plan. But if we look at the prevalence of blue, which cells are blue and how many MPAs are either blue or light blue, I think we can pick up three factors which are commonly deficient across many of the MPAs studied in this piece of work. And those relate to finance. They relate to improvement of socioeconomic conditions within MPA communities or close by, and they relate to inefficiencies in controlling utilization. So again, we're talking about effectiveness of MPA. So we're coming back to, I think, issues here of financial resources and MPA effectiveness. And the authors of this study conclude that of the 61 MPAs studied, none were sustainably managed, and over half were managed below or at the minimum threshold. So we do have some repeating issues, some common themes coming through here about management effectiveness in Indonesia. Which brings us to the point I would like to make for the remainder of the discussion, is how do we realize the benefits of MPAs? Because communities generally receive very few benefits from conservation. We have a lot of theoretical benefits, principally obviously relating to tourism, but others relating to spillover and so on, which in theory do happen, but in reality are rarer. And when we're looking at MPAs in Indonesia, I think the financial issue is an overriding factor driving performance. 2006, an estimate was made that the financial shortfall was over $80 million US dollars annually. Clearly, that is very much out of date and will be very much a low estimate now. And we're coming back to this assumption that tourism will, as a benefit, will provide some form of compensation for loss of access to marine resources following MPA designation. But in reality, again, tourism, the development of tourism or ecotourism is very much contingent on a whole range of economic factors, of social factors, of environmental factors, local, regional, international drivers. So even if all the ingredients for ecotourism around and within an MPA are present in terms of connectivity, in terms of political environment, in terms of the environmental quality, there is still no guarantee that tourism will take off. It's a very unpredictable factor. So we expand our MPA networks, we suggest or we assume that the loss of access to marine resources around MPAs will be compensated in one form or another. And we often look at tourism as one of those major drivers of compensation. But aside from its simplicity, this assumption, as we've seen in one or two of the slides earlier, effectively absolves the government from responsibility for following up on MPA designation. For example, if we rely on ecotourism to generate socioeconomic benefits, then effectively we're relying on the private sector to perform development functions. If we rely on the NGO sector to take on monitoring or outreach or there are other aspects of MPA ongoing management, then again, we're assuming the government does not have the responsibility to perform those civil service functions. Now, in some cases, this might be true. We can look at instances, particularly within Indonesia. We look at Raja Ampat and the success of Misul as an ecotourism diver context. We look at Wakatobi divers in Taman Nasional Wakatobi, and we can see some examples of community payments, which may yield some benefits. We look at Nusa Penida, which was one of the case studies earlier, and we see the success of the Nature Conservancy in outreach and so on. But even in those, we have problems. I don't wish to rehash these discussions, but the fairness, the equity behind a community payment scheme, such as practiced in Wakatobi, can be questioned. Similarly, in Nusa Penida, the longevity of transfer of knowledge from the NGO to the government can be questioned. There are alternatives which are put forward to generate principally economic but also social benefits, aside from tourism. Alternative livelihoods, for example, aquaculture, perhaps getting into the expanding blue carbon credits market, the biodiversity credits market, that could yield funds for MPA management. Debt for nature swaps in some cases in some countries have been shown to be successful, but all of those have their advantages and disadvantages. But I think we're coming back to this idea that there are barriers to improving MPA effectiveness. A lot of these are financial, and they in turn relate to the degree of compliance and support. If we have greater compliance and greater support within resident communities, then our costs of enforcement in terms of financial costs will be diminished. So the question I'd like to finish up on here is, how can we generate increased compliance and support for MPAs? And to answer that question, I think we first have to recognize how we define MPAs. What are the processes of MPA designation? It's a very abstract, scientific, data-led process. We have ideas of resource management, we have ideas of fish behavior and fish populations in relation to fishing pressure. And we include those onto GIS-based representations of socioeconomic situations in a marine context. We use things like MarkSAN to model those and to identify optimal sites for marine protected areas. And then those decisions are conveyed to local communities, admittedly with some consultation, but the emphasis is very much on these are the optimal sites for MPAs. There are education programs which are delivered to local communities alongside the stick, alongside the carrot, the stick being the gear confiscation of fines that go along with the infringements of those rules and regulations. So it's inevitable that there will be differences between local cultural or practices or economic views on marine resources when set alongside those very science-driven views, and that will reduce compliance. So are there alternative ways to design, to implement MPAs? And this is what I will just finish up on here. I think there are a few suggestions we could make. Co-design of MPAs at the outset is possible. It is possible for the scientifically optimal views on MPA siting and zoning to be presented and to be adapted to be more in line with community views, existing resource use and practices and so on. That will reduce the scientific validity, if you like, of the MPA. It will make it scientifically suboptimal, but it should generate greater compliance and therefore effectiveness. We can, and certain institutions are more involved in this now, build spatial and or temporal variability into zonation and regulations. With the impacts of climate change, clearly fixed boundaries and zones and regulations on the water are going to be more and more ineffective as climate change causes changes in population distributions of fish and so on. So adaptability in management plan is essential. And that can also reduce the perception that these boundaries and resource use regulations are permanent. we should be able to convey the impression that these are adaptable and will actually need to be more adaptive as climate change progresses. And that can have some benefits for effectiveness. And I think we also need to reduce the belief that economic benefits will automatically follow on from an MPA. They will not. They depend upon so many factors, because we are talking about tourism and other alternative income generating activities, which are by no means accessible to everyone or by any means guaranteed to follow on. And even if they did, we all know that the benefits of, for example, tourism and so on, filter down into local communities in differential ways. They are, the benefits are ordered by gender, they're ordered by ethnicity. And in many cases, it is the local fishermen amongst the poorest socioeconomic sectors of coastal communities who are least able to access those benefits. So false promises are worse than no promises. So we have to be aware of this and be realistic about the economic benefits. And if an MPA is co-designed well, there should be less need for those economic benefits in the first place. And finally, I believe obviously we need to make genuine steps towards empowering local communities, empowering communities to take an active role in the design, in monitoring, and enforcement, and in MPA review processes. There is an inherent problem of elite capture in any co-design, in any collaborative management process. But the MPA must be reflective of the community, not be something that is imposed upon it, if we are to address these issues of effectiveness, of compliance, and make the ever-expanding network of MPAs of a higher quality. So, terima kasih untuk mendengarkan, and je vous remercie de votre attention. And I will now pass back to Oskar.
Thank you, Julian, for this very comprehensive and fascinating discussion that opens up a lot of avenues for questions and comments. There has been some comments in the chat. A nice comment from Tanguy Nicolas saying that that's something you observed in Tanzania as well. And also a challenging question from François Roubaud about the improvement of social welfare community participations in MPAs. Maybe you can start there. I think his question is also about the scientific evidence and what was revealed by the research from Leah and Sukri in the field studies. Leah, Sukri, do you want to tell a few words about the scientific evidence and the test that you could perform and what came out of the research on the field about those questions? So yeah, Leah, I think we can do also without your camera if you can switch your microphone on, or otherwise you can go ahead.
Since you are talking about the scientific evidence, probably Leah can go first, and then I will back up with some qualitative evidence. Please go ahead, Leah.
Hello, can you hear me? My camera doesn't work. I'm so sorry.
Leah, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
All right. So I get a chance to see the management performance value indicators in figure 3 of Professor Julian's slide. So the figure 3 is management performance value of each indicator in different study sites. It looks like based on the findings that the visualization that you show here to us today, finance, socioeconomic condition, and control utilization amongst lowest scoring performance indicators. It looks like it aligned with the findings, like with our quantitative findings, for example, from although we did not put any or calculate any scores in performance indicators, but it is obviously it is based on our visualization and quantitative data. it is still not the priority. And also it's actually interesting to see your figure 3 and intriguing to see to see the study from Meliana et al. Of 2023, right, Professor Clifton? Yeah. And then the other thing, when I get a chance to see your slide here, you talk about the tourism. So this is definitely something interesting. So from several studies, from several findings regarding tourism as the alternative livelihood of the population residing near MPAs, I get a chance to read some literature that found that tourism sometimes works, but sometimes it doesn't work. And when we get a chance to see the data from PODES, village potential census data, but unfortunately we didn't show that in our slide due to the limited time, and then we have to pick the slides, pick the visual out of so many visuals that we provide in our paper. And unfortunately the findings regarding the marine sectors was not shown. But let me tell you that our findings from PODES data found that marine sectors, the number of the village, the number of coastal village who harnessing sea for tourism sectors is actually higher in MPA village, but that is not the case for the non-MPA village. So we compare the coastal villages, and we see the coastal villages near MPA and the coastal villages not near MPA, and we see there is actually an increase in the marine tourism activities in a higher increase for the village located near the MPAs. But unfortunately, and I think this is also something that this is also findings from qualitative study for the case of Nusa Penida. There is like a tourism booming, but we have to be careful in interpreting the findings, because when we see the chart, is it because of MPAs? Is it because because the MPAs authority already activate their alternative livelihood plan? But we have to be careful in interpreting that result, because that is not always the case. I mean, like the tourism, the marine tourism, the booming in marine tourism in the village located near MPAs, it may not be the case because of MPAs, but it could be because of external factors other than MPAs. So that we have to take a look and do maybe further study to know that phenomenon. Yeah, I think that's some of findings from the quantitative that I can share with you, Professor Clifton. Maybe Mas Shukri, do you have any additional findings, particularly for the qualitative results, from the qualitative result?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. It is interesting, especially about the case of tourism, as highlighted by Pak Julian. And in one of our field case study, especially in Nusa Penida, Nusa Penida is part of Bali, and the tourism is really advanced here. But it's only since 2015, not before it. And for some observer, probably will assume that there is a connection between the establishment of the MPA about a few years before that, with a very steep growth of tourism in that area. But in fact, there is no connection between them based on our fieldwork. Even there is no coordination between two boards, a provincial board that tasked to manage the MPA and the other board that manage the tourism. They are not working together at all. So the development of MPA in the development of tourism in Nusa Penida is purely a market lead initiatives, not necessarily has something to do with the effort of the government to endorse, to support with policies, with any kind of support that the government can do to push the tourism to be like it is now in Nusa Penida. And in reality, the management of tourism is not in any single way take into account the fact that some of the spot of Nusa Penida is no take zone. It means there should not be activity around that. Based on our direct observation, we can easily see how many speedboat and tourism boats go and force in an area that is actually a no-take zone. There's supposed to be no any ship, any boat, any other activities around there. But you can see if you go to the Nusa Penida, one of the locations we visited is near to the port, a village, a traditional port in Nusa Penida. Actually, just about a kilometer ahead of this port is a no-take zone that nobody can do anything there. But that is a very good spot for tourism, for diving and snorkeling. And people can go do diving and snorkeling freely. And when we talk to the managers of MPA, it seems they have a problem, as mentioned by Pak Julian, basically about the budget to ensure that they can monitor the area adequately. So, for example, when we ask them how many times they do monitoring, supervising the areas, they said about once per 3 months. So how can they ensure that the take zone is clean from any activities if they only visit the area once per 3 months? And that is very makes sense for us because they only have about 200 million rupiah for a year for the whole activity managing the MPA. 200 million means about $200 US dollar, even less probably. Yeah, 2,000 US dollar probably to manage that very quite big MPA. That is impossible to do. So that's why we conclude that the poor management of the MPA in the case of Nusa Penida, but the case is quite common, not only in Nusa Penida, that is also the case with Saburejwa and also in North Sulawesi. The government do not allocate enough budget, and for us, not allocating enough budget is a good indicator of a political commitment of the government for improving the quality of governance of an MPA. If they really do care about the MPA, they should allocate more money, but in reality, they don't.
Thank you, Lia and Sukri. So you're bringing up a lot of additional issues. Working on economic activities alongside protecting MPAs seems very challenging. We have a complementary question from Olivier Braunscheffer in the stream of questions about locally managed marine areas. Maybe I think it relates also to the question by Marielle Richon on cultural factors. You spoke, Sukri, about the qualitative aspects of how MPAs are managed right now and the governance problems. Can you say a few words about the cultural factors and also maybe about locally managed marine areas, if you have some experience in some of them, or if you gathered some data about some of them? Lia and Sukri, and Julian, if you have something to say about this, please feel free also to comment.
Can I respond first?
Please go ahead.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Olivier. Yes, LMMAs were not specifically mentioned in either presentation, partly due to time factors, but also because LMMAs fall under the remit of the MMAF, the Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries. So obviously LMMAs are very much more of a bottom-up process of marine resource management. I'm not going to use the word marine protected areas because they're not. They are different. They are other effective conservation measures. But they do fall under the remit of the MMAF. So in the data that was presented earlier, they are part and parcel of the overall number of MPAs and villages near MPAs and so on. I'm not sure that LMMAs address the weaknesses, because I think LMMAs are a very different beast altogether. I think LMMAs do provide many of the answers, but they don't address the weaknesses of MPAs as we understand them in a formal sense, because LMMAs are set up by local communities with fishery management in mind, not conservation, not tourism. And I think they're a much more effective means of addressing resource management issues. And now, obviously, with the advent of the BBNJ and the recognition of other effective conservation measures, we can include them in our 30% targets. And I think that is the way forward. I cannot imagine that Indonesia or any other government with an archipelagic coastline can meet the 30% target, and whilst improving effectiveness of marine resource management overall. MMAs, I do believe, are very much part of that solution, very much part of that pathway forward. They're probably less, they generate less media attention. It's much easier to put out media stories about Komodo, about 10 new Balis, which I remember from a few years ago now, being an answer for tourism. And they don't generate the additional media attention. And therefore they do fly under the radar, but they are very much a means of a way forward. I'll stop there.
Sukri, or Lia, do you wanna add something about LMMAs in Indonesia?
Go ahead, Mas.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the questions. It's really interesting, actually. Although our study did not focus on LMAs in specific, but we did come across some of the local practices of preserving their natural resources, including marine resources, through local mechanisms. And for our study, that has been not our focus. So we don't have really a consolidated conclusion about your question about the LMAs in Indonesia. But yes, the practice is quite common in Indonesia. For example, in Saburejwa, one of our informant is the local indigenous leaders, who also has an authority to set the timeline for marine activities for the villagers. So there will be a kind of specific months in a year. I forgot for the precise, but if I'm not mistaken, for the case of Saburejwa is from January to July. No, it's only 3 months. January, February, March. Maybe from January to March, there will be no activities in the sea for exploiting marine resources. And that is also because on that month, actually, in the eastern Indonesia, the sea is not really friendly. It's really rough, so it's quite dangerous. And also the indigenous leaders said that this is has been in place since long ago, but we understand that this also has it on effect on how they stay away from the very rough sea on that month. But that is one of the example how local traditional mechanism preserve the marine resources by setting the time that the fisher may not exploit the sea on that period of time. And I think the same practice has been quite common as well in the eastern part of Indonesia. They call it sasi. Even though in my field site, they do not say term it in sasi, but sasi is quite common in Indonesia about the open and close period for doing marine activities, fishing activities in the seas. I'm sorry if I cannot answer you quite while about that topic, because that was not our focus in this study. Probably Leah can add a little bit more about that.
Yeah, we actually from the quantitative data, the survey and census data, unfortunately, because this is a secondary data, so it does not provide the information according to our objective. So we use the data as it is available in the survey or census. But what so what usually provided in the survey or census is usually about the community participation. That is something that has been asked from IFLS survey. But unfortunately, there is no particular questions. Do you participate in local marine protected activities in your communities? There is no something like that. So what we can come close by looking at the questions such as people's participation in community meetings and voting, for example. And also the votes can be for everyone, starting from president, the legislative, Congress, and even the village head. So we wanted to see their participation, but not particularly their local participation in marine protection activities. Yeah.
Thank you, Leah, Sukri, and Julian. We have a question about the conservation targets in the stream of questions. Just want to mention that if you missed the presentation, there is going to be a replay available to all the people that have registered to this seminar. So the conservation targets were not the focus of this research, given the scope of the research facility on inequality. So we wanted to focus instead also on the achieving social objectives in marine protected areas. The setting up and the management of MPAs revolves around achieving those conservation targets and biological targets. So we wanted to contribute also in complementing this with a broader view about social issues, economic issues, well, that give a different view on economic issues as well. Maybe you have a few words to say about achieving biological and conservation targets alongside those economic and social objectives, Sukri, Leah, or Julian?
Okay, Oskar, yes, as you mentioned, that is not our focus in this study, but there are some information that may be worth to share with the audience. The biggest problem, I guess, with the Indonesian MPAs, to our knowledge, there is no single MPAs establishment in Indonesia that also establish a kind of a baseline data against which they can evaluate how good they are achieving some of their goals, including for the biological diversity. So I had a chance to interview one of the field officers in Saburai Jua that openly confessed that is the problem for them, because there is no a baseline. They cannot claim that they have achieved a certain level of their goal to conserve the biological diversity in that area. And again, we come back to the issues of funding. Conducting a baseline study covering Sabu Rejua is Sabu Sea conservation area is, I think, the biggest in Indonesia, covering about 2 provinces. Yeah, so you can imagine how much money they need to establish a very rigorous baseline study for that biodiversity, and that let alone about the social aspect, about the welfare of the community. So even for Indonesian MPA managers that focus more on biodiversity, they cannot establish the baseline for the biological diversity. Yeah, we cannot expect that they will have a kind of baseline data for the condition of the community near the MPA against which they can evaluate their achievement in improving the welfare of the community. So yeah, I guess one area that the government of Indonesia really need the improvement is how they improve the quality of the monitoring and evaluation, or what they call EFICA, which, as Leah mentions, focus more on the quantity rather than the quality in many aspects. Thank you, Oskar.
Some additional comments, Leah or Julian? As you wish.
Yeah, I was about to write down the response. So for the conservation target, so it's the questions. Oh yeah, Professor Clifton. Oh, okay. All right.
Please go ahead, Leah. Go ahead.
All right. All right. So the questions about the impact of conservation target, I think that is not part of this study. So we cannot really say more about this. And as suggested by Mashukru previously, one of the issues that we have right now is the lack of data to understand. I mean, like, if you want to know the impact of something, you have to have before and after the treatment, right? Before and after the MPAs, what's going on? But that data is not available. Yeah, I think that's all.
Thank you, Leah. Julian, I can see you have a problem with your camera as well. Do you want to comment on this issue of achieving conservation targets alongside social and economic objectives? You're muted.
Sorry. I think the conservation targets are, I was going to say the word dangerous. I think they're dangerous for managers because they, as Siukri was saying, they set unattainable or unprovable targets, because not only do we have no baseline, we've got the shifting baselines phenomenon. So any data that we are collecting is indicative of a degraded environment. I think there is a few areas for optimism. I was reading some work recently which was talking about using, this is getting outside of my area, sonic indicators of fish activity as a reflector of coral reef health, and using AI to determine what an optimal coral reef is in terms of the amount of fish noise that is associated with it. And I think there's some potential here. I mean, this is obviously quite advanced technology, but if we can develop more techniques which are cost effective, can be performed remotely to get some indicators of reef health, I'm talking coral reefs mainly, but obviously mangroves, etc., then we can possibly redress some of these deficiencies. But we're looking years into the future here, and we need to address the problem sooner than that. I don't know what the answers are, but I think setting conservation targets is a very Western-driven model. It's terrestrial biodiversity-driven model of conservation. It's not suitable for a marine environment for all sorts of reasons, and particularly where resources are so scarce. I would actually ask perhaps Sucre and Leah here, do you feel that we've had a decentralization from the center to the provinces, and now a re-centralization appears to be underway for a few years now. Do you think, and this is maybe a very Indonesia-specific question, but any country with some devolution of powers faces these issues, are the provinces more capable, more likely to devote finances and budgets towards MPA management than under a more centralized system?
Okay. Thank you for the question, Julian. I think the issues of decentralization in Indonesia has been quite overwhelming, not only in the case of marine protected areas, because Indonesia recently experienced what we call re-centralization rather than decentralization. So before 2014, Indonesia applied the quite advanced decentralization by devolving authority to manage resources, not only marine resources, so all types of resources to the district government, not to province government, so directly to the district government. But after a few years of decentralization, the government said, based on the government's arguments, that such a decentralization has led into more corruptions, because then local leaders can sell their resources not in a good way, not through legally binding mechanisms. So that in 2014, they decided, the national government and the parliament decided to take over the resource management from district government into province government. But in Indonesian political system, province government basically is the representative of national government at the regional level. So province government basically is the national government at the local level. So about the quality, based on our short evaluation in the case of MPA management, there is no difference between the MPA that is managed by the province government now with the MPA that was governed by the district government. Even for some informant, Nusa Penida, for example, Pak Julian, it was managed by the district of Klungkung. And at that time, they had successfully established at least many infrastructure that they really needed at that time to implement a good management of MPA, like staff, for example, quite a lot of experienced staff at that time. But because they transferred the authority, because the national government take back the authority to manage MPA from district, those people who were the managers, the well-equipped staff that was trained by TNC, the local NGO that worked with the government in establishing the MPA, the province budget mechanism cannot absorb them into the system. So those people who are working now under the province management are the new one. And even according to the manager, the head of the MPA managers at the province level, he admit that no one of the staff in the field has the capacity as good as those who were in that areas that were trained by TNC. So there is no systematic mechanism at the province government that differentiate them from the district governments. But We do see that the difference is quite significant if we compare it into the MPA that directly managed by the national government. So like Saburai Jua, for example, this is one of the MPA that is directly managed by the national government through a special body directly under the Ministry of Marine Affairs. Nusa Penida, we chose it as one of our location because it is managed by the province governments. So in terms of the overall management, I personally saw that in the field they are much more advanced in many ways. They have a lot of stuff. Yeah, they have quite advanced infrastructure like. A special boat for monitoring, for example. They also have law enforcement staff, yeah, and that is not the case with the province government, and probably and not probably, and they also have much bigger budget than the province governments. So for your insight about the province government's body that manage the MPA, they're actually just a small part of the province office for marine and fisheries. What they call it? A province office of marine and fish, something like that. Yeah. So the MPA is a very small office in it with a budget probably less than 10% of the overall office. So yeah, in short, I can say there is no significant difference in terms of the quality of the province government and district government in managing the MPA. But the quite significant difference is with the nationally established unit, yeah, to manage the MPA, like we found in Saburai Jua.
Thank you, Sukri. Thank you, Julian and Leah. So we have time for a last question from the audience if anyone wishes to come forward right now. Otherwise, so this is an ongoing research. So the paper on which this presentation today was based is going to be published soon. It's going to be published in the AFD research paper series if you're interested to follow up on this. The replay is also going to be available soon for those who might be interested or who may wish to disseminate this seminar. Please feel free to do so. And thank you very much for everyone's participation. Yeah, selamat pagi, right? Thank you very much. Yeah, I think my bahasa is a bit mixed up, right? Maybe I leave a few I leave a few conclusion words to any one of you if you wish to make some.
Sukri?
Yeah.
Oh, Leah?
Me?
Yeah, Mas Shukri, go ahead, Mas Shukri.
Yeah, our final conclusion is that we appreciate the initiative that has been conducted by the Indonesian government by expanding the MPA in Indonesia, even as Professor Julian CLIFTON said that it's quite progressive. But I think Indonesian government is still has a lot to do to improve the quality of MPA management. So not only focusing on the quantity by expanding the number of the MPA, but especially I think we need to help Indonesian government to improve the quality of management of MPA. And one of the efforts that AFD is doing is by a commission a study to us. Based on this study, then we developed a toolbox for the MPA managers to take into account about the social aspect as much as the natural environmental aspect of the MPA. So especially, I guess, one aspect the MPA management that is also need attention is to improve the monitoring and evaluation system that is currently in place through what they call ETHICA. Without the good monitoring and evaluation system, it is quite difficult for us to see that the improvement is going to the better way that we expect it to be. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sukri, and thank you for the advertising for AFD's work in this area. We're very happy to work with SMERU Institute, and we're going to try to implement some of the recommendations from this research into specific trainings and specific tools towards practitioners, future MPA managers, and possibly also link this with economic issues, NGOs and private actors. Julian, if you want to have a few words of conclusion as well.
I think Leah wanted to say something first.
Oscar, sorry. Yes, please, Leah, go ahead.
Yeah. So from my last conclusion, I think it is very important to again incorporate the community welfare objective in the establishment of MPAs, and because the community, because the local communities, it's to recognize the interdependence between the well-being of local communities and also the conservation initiative. And in order to do that, Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fishery cannot do it alone. So they need help. They need some collaboration with other ministries and local governments, NGO, and private sector to make sure that both conservation and socioeconomic goals come into reality. Yeah, I think that's all my conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. Julian, your turn.
Okay, merci. Thank you. Just a final thought, really. I've been working in Indonesian context of MPAs for the past a few years, and I've been amazingly impressed by MMAF. I think the staff at MMAF, the leadership in the past as well, have been exemplary in promoting this idea that we need to be focusing upon fishers and communities within MPAs. And I think they've had a big internal struggle with other ministries, perhaps Ministry of Environment and Forestry or Ministry of Forestry in the past, in this regard. And I think they've really led the way, particularly amongst tropical countries. I don't think you find many instances where the needs and the livelihoods of fishers and communities are given the priority that we find in Indonesia. And I think this is just the latest example of that emphasis and that professionalism. And I'd like to thank Sukri and Leah for this contribution, and of course Oskar and the AFD for facilitating this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and see you for the next research conversation seminar next month. Thank you very much, and goodbye, everyone.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
Oskar.
you so much, Pak Julian.
Yes.
Thank you.
Au revoir.